The scream pierced the silence of the sprawling Carter estate like a gunshot. James Carter, a 45-year-old tech mogul worth $250 million, froze in the grand foyer, his Bentley keys slipping from his hand. He just returned from a grueling board meeting in Chicago, a custom bracelet for his adopted 9-year-old daughter, Amara, tucked in his coat pocket. Her desperate cry, "I just want my dad," sent his leather briefcase crashing to the polished oak floor. James had conquered corporate giants and outmaneuvered shady investors, but nothing had prepared him for this. His daughter, sobbing in his own home. Fury surged as he bolted up the curved staircase, his footsteps echoing like thunder. Amara's bedroom door hung slightly open, revealing a scene that seared itself into his memory. Amara sat curled on her bed, clutching a tattered stuffed rabbit, tears streaking her face as she hid behind her tight curls. Towering over her was Margaret Voss, the family's live-in nanny of 6 years, her voice sharp as a blade. "You're just a pity case, girl. Your father only took you in for the headlines. You don't belong in a place like this." The words hit James like a physical blow. He'd built his empire in Seattle from nothing, a kid from a rundown neighborhood who clawed his way to MIT. But this betrayal in his own home against his daughter ignited a rage he hadn't felt since his early days scrapping for survival. "Leave. Now." His voice was low, lethal, cutting through the air like a guillotine. Margaret spun, her smug expression dissolving as she saw James in the doorway. "Mr. Carter, I was just teaching her manners." "Teaching her manners?" James stepped forward, his presence filling the room like a storm cloud. "Telling my daughter she's a charity case is manners?" Amara flung herself into his arms, sobbing. "Dad, she said you don't love me." James held her tightly, his voice softening for her alone. "That's a lie, sweetheart. I love you more than anything." His eyes, however, stayed locked on Margaret, cold and unyielding. "Pack your things. You're done here." Margaret stammered, backing away, but the steel in James's gaze silenced her. She fled the room, oblivious to the storm she'd unleashed. As James comforted Amara, stroking her hair until she drifted to sleep, he made a vow. Margaret Voss would regret ever crossing his family. 3 days later, James's phone buzzed at 5:30 a.m. It was the principal of Amara's private school in Bellevue. "Mr. Carter, we've received a disturbing call about Amara's home life. Allegations of neglect and an unfit environment. They claim you're not equipped to raise a child of her background." James's grip tightened on the phone. Margaret was retaliating, targeting Amara's safe haven, the school where she'd finally found friends. "Who made the call?" he demanded. "Anonymous, but we're required to investigate. Expect a home visit this week." As he hung up, James's mind raced back to his childhood, watching his mother lose her job to a manager's restructuring ploy. At 17, he'd sworn he'd never be powerless again. Now Margaret was trying to strip that control away, weaponizing Amara's identity. But she'd underestimated him. At breakfast, Amara twirled in a blue dress dotted with daisies, her favorite. "Why do you look mad, Dad?" she asked, her brown eyes searching his face. "Just work stuff, kiddo," James lied, forcing a smile. Inside, he was already plotting. Margaret had declared war, and he never lost a fight. That afternoon, James descended to the basement vault, where he kept meticulous records on every employee. Margaret had signed an ironclad confidentiality agreement when she was hired. Breaching it would ruin her financially. But James wanted more than a lawsuit. He called Elena Ruiz, a private investigator who'd exposed a corrupt city councilman the previous year. "Elena, I need everything on Margaret Voss. Her past jobs, finances, social media, everything. You have 36 hours. 2 nights later, Elena arrived with a dossier that made James's lips curl into a grim smile. Margaret wasn't just cruel. She was a predator. Over 12 years, she'd worked for 8 affluent families, each with adopted children of color. Every job ended the same. Traumatized kids, vague disciplinary excuses, and Margaret moving on unscathed. The Park family in San Francisco reported their Korean daughter developing panic attacks. The Lindsays, a mixed-race couple in Portland, noted their son's sudden fear of being alone with her. The real bombshell was Margaret's secret blog, Guarding Heritage, where she ranted about outsiders tainting elite households. She'd posted photos of the children she'd worked for, including Amara, with captions about correcting misplaced charity cases. It was a digital confession of her cruelty. James called his lawyer, Sarah Kim, a 48-year-old powerhouse who dismantled corporations in high-profile discrimination cases. Sarah, this is bigger than a firing. Margaret's been abusing kids for years. I want her buried. Sarah pored over the files, her eyes narrowing. This isn't just defamation, James. It's targeted racial harassment. We can sue for emotional distress, privacy violations, and child endangerment. And with her blog, she's handed us a signed confession. Meanwhile, Margaret doubled down. She called Amara's school again, alleging aggressive behavior from the girl. She filed a report with Child Services, claiming James neglected Amara emotionally. What she didn't know was that James had installed audio surveillance in the estate's phone lines after a corporate espionage scare. Every call was recorded, her venom preserved for posterity. The next morning, Sarah arrived with her legal team and a cybersecurity specialist. Margaret's blog is a goldmine, Sarah said, flipping through screenshots. She's violated privacy laws in 3 states. And the families she's worked for? Some are high profile. The Park's daughter is now a mental health advocate with 1 million followers. The Lindsays run a nonprofit for foster kids. If we get them to go public, Margaret's done. James nodded. Do it. Fast. Then his phone rang, a blocked number. Margaret's voice dripped with false concern. Mr. Carter, I hate how things ended. I have concerns about your driver, Luis, and the maid, Sophia. Their backgrounds might not suit a child like Amara. We should meet to discuss. James played along, his voice calm. What do you want, Margaret? A small arrangement. Say $15,000 and I'll keep quiet. I could even recommend you to other families. Sarah, listening in, scribbled furiously. Extortion. They had her. Tomorrow 2 p.m., James said. The coffee shop on Pine Street. The meeting was a trap. James sat across from Margaret, who arrived in a tailored coat, radiating smug confidence. Mr. Carter, I'm glad we can be reasonable, she began, leaning in. Your staff, Luis, Sophia. They're not the right fit for a girl like Amara. I can help you replace them with better options. James let her dig her grave. How much to make this go away? $15,000, she said, smirking. And a glowing reference. Sarah approached, tablet in hand. Margaret Voss, I'm Sarah Kim, Mr. Carter's attorney. This conversation is recorded. Extortion is a felony, punishable by up to 7 years. Margaret's face went ashen as Sarah displayed the blog post titled, Taming Unfit Additions to Proper Homes, featuring Amara's photo. You can't, Margaret stammered. We can, Sarah cut in. The Park and Lindsay families are ready to testify. Your blog is evidence of systematic abuse. And those calls to child services? Perjury. You're looking at multiple lawsuits. Margaret's phone buzzed. It was a lawyer representing 4 of her former employers, filing a $3 million class action suit. As she sank into her chair, customers in the coffee shop began whispering, recognizing her from a viral post by the Park's daughter. This nanny tormented me for years. Time to stop her. James leaned in, his voice ice cold. You tried to break my daughter. You failed. And now you'll never hurt another child again. 6 months later, Margaret Voss was a cautionary tale. The extortion charge led to 2 years of house arrest and 400 hours of community service at a youth shelter. A poetic irony. The class action suit drained her savings, forcing her to sell her condo. Her name, now synonymous with child abuser, was blacklisted by every nanny agency in the Pacific Northwest. The Park's daughter's post, #StopMargaretVoss, sparked a movement, with thousands sharing stories of domestic worker abuse. James and Amara, meanwhile, turned pain into purpose. The Carter Foundation for Child Safety, with Amara as its youth spokesperson, grew into a national force. At a fundraiser, Amara, now 10, spoke to a crowd of 500. My dad taught me that mean people are just scared of being small. But we can make the world bigger for everyone. One evening, as Amara practiced violin in the living room, on the same instrument Margaret had mocked her for touching, James received a letter from Margaret begging forgiveness. He handed it to Amara, who read it silently. Dad, she doesn't get it. This isn't about her. It's about making sure kids like me feel safe. James tore up the letter. His daughter had just summed up justice better than any courtroom ever could. As he watched Amara play, her notes filling the estate with warmth, James knew the true victory wasn't Margaret's ruin. It was building a world where his daughter, and every child, could thrive unburdened by hate. Margaret Voss had tried to shatter a family. Instead, she forged a legacy of love and resilience that would outlast her name.